Hello again, everyone. This is Chicago Reacts, Americans Learn. My name is Colin, and today I'm watching Napoleon Defeated, Aspern, 1809. Again, this is from Epic History TV. If you haven't watched any of the other previous videos, there's like 5 or 6 of them now at this point. And if you want to follow along chronologically, in this history of Napoleon's reign of terror, maybe some might call it, conquest of Europe, go back and watch those videos. They should be somewhere in the playlist. But yeah, the last video I watched, we saw it was Napoleon's blunder, his big loss in Spain, which marked his first major loss. And based on the title of this video, Napoleon Defeated, I'm going to guess that we're going to learn about how Napoleon was defeated. And I'm guessing, based off of my limited memory knowledge of this period, Napoleon is going to be exiled as well to an island, I think. I don't remember what the name of the island was, but I'm guessing that's what we're going to be learning here in this video. So without further ado, I think that's enough introduction there. Also, be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. We definitely like having more subscribers. I'm sure eventually, if we get more subscribers and people who enjoy watching this type of content, then maybe we can start a Patreon page for this one specifically. We don't have one yet. So, you know, if you like this kind of content and you want more of your friends to be enjoying content like this as well, share it with them, and then, I don't know, maybe we'll be incentivized to start a Patreon page or something like that and get your name out in the titles, right? Okay. I think that's enough pandering, right? So let's get right into the video, shall we?
An Epic History TV History March collaboration, supported by our sponsor, Osprey Publishing.
Osprey Publishing.
In 1809, France, under Napoleon Bonaparte, was the most powerful nation in Europe. But the French Emperor's invasion of Spain and Portugal the previous year had failed to deliver the easy victory he'd expected. And with many of Napoleon's best troops and commanders now tied down in Spain, an old enemy prepared to challenge France once more.
Okay. The court of Vienna is behaving very badly and may have cause to repent. All right. Foreboding. Let's see. Wait. Let's see who that's from. Yep. Napoleon to Joseph. All right. The main reason why I wanted to pause is just because looking at the faces of the people in this painting here, that we've seen some pretty epic, well-made paintings here that really give scale and a sense of, I don't know, epicness, largeness to the battles and the people who are being depicted. But this painting here, just look at those faces. These look like, I don't know, what do you call it? Like ceramic dolls. Those kind of creepy looking faces. Not a particularly flattering painting is kind of the conclusion I'm making here. So if I was any of the folks that was being depicted in this painting, I'd be a little insulted. Just saying. That's my opinion.
Austria had been preparing for war with France since her last humiliating defeat at Austerlitz in 1805.
Austerlitz.
Now, with Napoleon busy in Spain and a British promise of cash subsidies, plus a supporting attack in Northern Europe, it looked like the ideal time to strike. This time, Austria's armies would be led by Archduke Charles, Emperor Francis's younger brother. At 37, he was 2 years younger than Napoleon, but already had 15 years' experience of high command. And he was learning from past defeats. He'd begun to reform the Austrian army along French lines, copying Napoleon's corps system and introducing new infantry tactics. In the Napoleonic Wars, infantry fought in close order, packed together, standing shoulder to shoulder. But why present such an easy target for the enemy? First, command and control. Before radios, orders had to be relayed by shouted commands, drums, or
Finally!
bugles.
Finally getting an answer to the question I've had since probably the first of these videos that I watched. Okay, so we're getting into it now. Command and control. So, I mean, well, shouting and bugles, drums. Okay, all those are ways to communicate. What else do they have?
Difficult enough in the smoke and din of battle. Almost impossible if troops were scattered. Second, firepower. Smoothbore muskets were inaccurate beyond about 80 yards, so volley fire, firing en masse, was the best way to inflict physical and psychological damage on the enemy. Third, morale. Soldiers were much more willing to advance into danger or hold the line if they did so together as a unit, urging each other on. Fourth, defense against cavalry. Scattered infantry were easy targets for horsemen. Only by sticking together could they fight them off.
Oh my gosh, wait, hang on a second. Go back to, yeah, okay. I can't indicate, it doesn't look like the mouse shows up, yeah, on that side, so I can't really indicate, but there's a person, if you can see in this group here, the third from the left, he looks like he's already dead. I mean, the pale face and everything, are they, maybe they did care about protecting their dead during this time, although that doesn't seem practical. But anyway, that's something I pointed out there, that observation I had about the painting. I have a lot of observations about paintings, apparently.
Together, could they fight them off? The basic tactical unit of infantry was the battalion. A French line battalion had, in theory, 840 men, but in practice, nearer 500 to 600. Our example here has 605 men, a typical strength for a battalion on campaign. The men were divided into 6 companies, 4 fusilier companies, and 2 flank companies. On the right, the grenadiers, made up of the tallest, strongest men, often detached to form elite all-grenadier units.
I do want to look up the definition of the word fusilier. I want to see what that actually means. Okay, that doesn't help me too much. It says a member of any of several British regiments formerly armed with fusils. I still don't know what a fusil is, though. Yeah, a soldier armed with a fusil, or armed with a fusil. So that didn't really answer my question, I guess. If you know a better definition of a or what is a fusel? If you know what a fusel is, I don't want to waste too much more time on looking stuff up, but if you know what a fusel is, please put it down in the comments for me. Thank you.
And on the left, the voltigeurs, specialist light infantry, used for skirmishing in front of the battalion.
Okay.
Skirmishers moved independently, used cover, and fired at will to harass and unsettle the enemy, while preventing enemy skirmishers carrying out the same task. Most armies also had specialist light infantry units for this role, such as the British 95th Rifles, French Chasseurs à Pied, and Austrian and Prussian Jäger battalions. The traditional battlefield formation was the line. All companies formed up alongside each other, 3 ranks deep. Line formation maximised the number of men who could fire their muskets at the enemy, and limited casualties from artillery fire. But it was extremely vulnerable to cavalry if it could be outflanked. And even for well-drilled troops, it was difficult to keep the line straight while advancing across broken ground. So for manoeuvre and attack, battalions usually formed a column of divisions. This was a more flexible formation that allowed the battalion to advance quickly, though it presented a larger target to enemy guns, firing solid round shot that would tear through several ranks, and far fewer men could fire their muskets at the enemy. Theoretically, therefore, the battalion would deploy into line before reaching the enemy. But carrying out this slow manoeuvre under fire wasn't always possible or sensible. So some commanders kept their men in column, relying on momentum to break the enemy line. This was a risky tactic that often worked against raw troops, but led to high casualties when facing better trained infantry, like British redcoats. A column could be closed up quickly to provide protection from cavalry, or if there was time, could form a square. With bayonets fixed, the battalion formed an all-round defence that often resembled more of a rectangle. Enemy cavalry could surround the battalion, but not break in, as horses won't charge a solid wall of men and steel. But an infantry square was extremely vulnerable to artillery fire, and could only move very slowly. Changing quickly and smoothly from one formation to another, especially under fire, required training, practice, and experience. In 1809, the Austrian army began to use the battalion mass formation.
So I'm getting the sense, and maybe this is a pretty obvious and dumb observation to make, but I'm guessing this is where color guard comes from, right? The practicing of the marching and the formations and whatnot. Color guard and marching band, I would assume. I mean, there's less music, in battle beyond like the bugles and the drums for communicating signals or orders. And now it's morphed more into a form of entertainment during halftime shows and football games and whatnot. But it's the same principles, right? So is that just kind of, this must be where color guard and marching band comes from, right? Someone let me know if you know the exact answer to that. Yeah.
But more suited to hastily trained conscripts. This was a dense column with limited firepower and huge vulnerability to enemy cannon. But it could quickly close up to repel cavalry using the same principle as the square, but without the complex drill, and was much more maneuverable. Napoleon, warned by his spies that Austria was preparing for war, left Spain and raced back to Paris, arriving on the 24th of January 1809. The French army in Germany, commanded by Marshal Berthier, would need urgent reinforcement. So Napoleon summoned units from Spain, called up young conscripts, and soldiers from his German allies in the Confederation of the Rhine. La Grande Armée was no longer the finely honed instrument of 1805, but with Napoleon at its head, it was still a formidable force. Archduke Charles ordered diversionary attacks in Poland and northern Italy, but launched his main attack against France's ally, Bavaria, on the 10th of April. It came a week earlier than Napoleon had expected and caught the French Emperor by surprise. Charles was relying on a rapid advance, but a last-minute change of plans, torrential rain, and a slow-moving baggage train slowed progress to a crawl. Marshal Berthier was a brilliant chief of staff to Napoleon, but an indecisive field commander. His forces were too widely dispersed, and Marshal Davout's Third Corps was dangerously isolated at Regensburg. Charles ordered his corps to converge and destroy it. But on the 17th of April, Napoleon arrived at Donauwörth to take over command. He immediately ordered Davout to withdraw from his exposed position. It was too late for him to escape without a fight. Davout's Third Corps was one of the best in the Grande Armée, and in a fast-moving battle across wooded hills, the heroes of Auerstadt threw back the Austrians. Despite the heroism of General Major Liechtenstein, badly wounded, leading his troops forward. Third Corps escaped the encirclement. The Battle of Teugn-Hausen was the start of Napoleon's so-called four-day campaign. First, he used Marshal Lefebvre's Bavarian 7th Corps and a provisional corps under Marshal Lannes to drive a wedge into the Austrian army. Then he pursued its left wing towards Landshut, believing he was following the main Austrian army. French troops and their German allies stormed the town's bridge to win a hard-fought victory. But Napoleon realized that Archduke Charles was not at Landshut, and that, once again, he'd left Marshal Davout to face the main enemy force. Sending Marshal Bessieres in pursuit of the Austrian left wing, Napoleon swung north, falling on the Austrian 4th Corps at Eckmühl. The French and their German allies won their 4th victory in as many days. But Charles's main force was still intact, and hoping to keep it so, he ordered a rapid retreat across the Danube. The French pursued, storming the walled city of Regensburg, which they knew as Ratisbon, with its vital stone bridge. Napoleon put Marshal Lannes in charge of the assault. When the attack faltered, Lannes threatened to lead the next charge in person, and his men, suitably chastised, took the city. During the siege, Napoleon was hit in the foot by a spent bullet, causing widespread alarm, but it proved to be a superficial wound. Stubborn Austrian resistance had allowed Archduke Charles and his army to escape across the Danube. Napoleon had cut the Austrian army in half, but both sections now retreated in good order towards Vienna. Napoleon led his forces in pursuit, detaching Lefebvre's Bavarian Corps to deal with a popular revolt in Tyrol, and 3rd Corps and the Württemberg 8th Corps to guard his line of communications. Charles chose not to defend the capital, which surrendered on the 13th of May after a short bombardment. Instead, Charles and the Austrian army lay in wait across the Danube. Napoleon was now down to 80,000 men, facing 110,000 Austrians. Charles's army had fought bravely and well throughout the campaign, but Napoleon still had a low opinion of Austrian troops and decided to attack.
Oh boy. That's a pretty brutal thing to say, isn't it? To canon, all men are equal. Oof. Yikes.
On the night of the 20th of May, French engineers hastily built a series of floating bridges between the river islands of the Danube, and French troops began to cross.
I wonder if any of these bridges remain today. My guess is no, but that would be something, wouldn't it? Because my guess is these were intended to be temporary, just to move troops along. But I don't know if anyone knows if any of them survive or have any remnants surviving today. Let me know. I think that'd be interesting.
By noon the next day, Napoleon had most of Massena's 4th Corps and his cavalry across the river, about 24,000 men and 40 guns, holding the villages of Aspern and Essling. Napoleon expected the Austrians to retreat once more, and that he'd only face a rear guard. But reports soon arrived that the entire Austrian army was advancing against him in 5 attack columns, 90,000 men and 300 cannon. The situation got even worse. The Austrians began to float heavy barges and obstacles downriver to smash through the flimsy French bridge. Each time, Napoleon's only supply route was cut off for several hours, causing critical delays to the arrival of reinforcements and ammunition.
I didn't hear, what was it that they sent down the river to stop them? Yeah.
Austrians began to float heavy barges and obstacles downriver to smash through the flimsy French bridge.
And were they just by force smashing through them, or were they filled with explosives? Because that, I don't know, this visual isn't doing it justice. I feel like I feel like I'm missing something here, because I understand a barge can be pretty large, but it would have to be moving pretty fast to break. I mean, just how flimsy were these bridges? I mean, they had to be strong enough to carry thousands of troops along, right? I don't know. Were they filled with explosives? They didn't mention it here, but
Each time, Napoleon's only supply route was cut off for several hours, causing critical delays to the arrival of reinforcements and ammunition. The battle began around 2:45 p.m. as infantry of the Austrian First Column attacked Aspern. The village was soon under attack from 3 sides. General Molitor's French garrison clung on desperately, fighting hand-to-hand in the streets and suffering 50% casualties. To support the defenders of Aspern, Napoleon ordered cavalry to charge the Austrian Third Column. But they could not break through the Austrian infantry, closed up in their battalion mass formation. At 6 p.m, Archduke Charles ordered General Bellegarde's Second Column to take Aspern at any cost. Charles himself rode among the front ranks, urging the men forward. In ferocious fighting, the Austrians took the village. Napoleon immediately sent in newly arrived reinforcements to recapture it. About the same time, the Austrian Fourth Column began its attack on the village of Essling, where Marshal Lannes had taken charge of defences while he waited for his own corps to cross the Danube. The first Austrian assault was repulsed. The veteran French cavalry commander General d'Espagne led his cuirassiers in pursuit, but was hit by grape shot and died of his wounds.
is that a whip that he's holding? Like, what is that? So, I don't know. It doesn't seem long enough to be a whip or like an effective weapon for battle. Is it maybe just a crooked baton of some kind? Even still, that doesn't seem like a very effective weapon. I don't know. That's weird.
Around 9 p.m, the Austrian Fifth Column finally arrived in position and made its first attack against Essling, which was thrown back by Lannes' troops. As night fell, firing died out across the battlefield, and men got what rest they could among the dead and the wounded. Overnight, Second Corps and the Imperial Guard crossed the Danube to reinforce Napoleon's army, which now numbered 71,000 and 150 guns. But then the bridge broke again, leaving Davout's Third Corps still waiting to cross. Nevertheless, Napoleon decided to attack, using Second Corps to break the Austrian centre. But first, Aspern would have to be retaken. Heavy fighting broke out in the village before dawn. By 7 a.m, it was back in French hands. At Essling, fresh Austrian attacks were fought off by General Lassalle's cavalry and units of the Young Guard. With both flanks secure, Napoleon launched his main attack in the centre with Lannes' Second Corps. Austrian guns poured fire into the advancing French ranks. General Saint-Hilaire, leading the attack, a hero of Austerlitz and Jena, had his foot blown off, a wound that proved fatal. Archduke Charles sent his Grenadier Reserve forward to strengthen the line. The French infantry, under torrential fire, began to fall back. At this critical moment, the French bridge over the Danube was broken again, halting the vital flow of reinforcements and ammunition to Napoleon's army. By 2 p.m, the French had been driven out of Aspern once more. Heavy fighting continued in Essling, which was briefly captured by the Austrians, then retaken by the Young Guard. Napoleon knew his army could do no more. At 4 p.m, he ordered his exhausted cavalry to make a last charge to keep the enemy at bay, then gave the order to retreat. Archduke Charles, whose own army had suffered huge losses and was low on ammunition, was content to watch the French withdraw to the island of Lobau. In the final moments of the battle, Marshal Lannes, one of Napoleon's finest commanders and closest friends, was hit by a cannonball that smashed both his legs.
Oh, God.
He died of his wounds a week later.
Oh,
it was a deep blow to the Emperor.
Jeez. God, I mean, these wars were brutal, and like knowing where, I mean, I don't know exactly where, but knowing that medical science was not where it's at today, and God, it took him a week to die from getting hit from a cannonball. Can you imagine? Like, ugh. Eesh. What else is there to say? Like, that's horrific. My God.
The two-day Battle of Aspern-Essling was Napoleon's first major defeat, caused by his overconfidence and hasty planning.
Wait a second, I thought Spain was his first major defeat. Come on, Epic History Channel. Why are you lying to me? I'm just kidding.
Both sides suffered heavy losses, and Napoleon avoided a much greater disaster only because of the exhaustion of the Austrian army. The French Emperor had learned new respect for the Austrians. Under Archduke Charles, they had fought bravely, with greater confidence, organization, and leadership. Within days of his defeat, Napoleon had summoned reinforcements to join him on the Danube, and begun planning his revenge. If you'd like to learn more about Napoleon's major battles or campaigns, our sponsor Osprey Publishing has nearly 200 titles on the Napoleonic Wars, written by specialist historians and covering everything from the history of elite units to tactics, weapons and uniforms. Visit their website to find out more. Thanks to History March for creating the battle map. Visit his own YouTube channel for more great military history videos. And huge thanks to all our Patreon supporters for making this series possible. Find out how you too can appear in the credits, get early access, and vote for future topics at the Epic History TV Patreon page.
Alrighty. Let's get rid of that. Well, okay, so it doesn't sound like this was the defeat of Napoleon. But certainly a major defeat. So let's see what is after this video. Okay, Great Blunder, Great to be. Okay, that's Alexander. Napoleon's Revenge. There it is. Wagram, not Warsaw. Wagram. 8299 is going to be the next one. We got a few more. Okay. Sorry, I'm just like I'm trying to figure out what. There's a lot more Napoleon content up here, so we're not quite at the end yet. So that the title of this video was a little deceiving, at least for me, and my ignorance of when and how these wars ended. But that's a good thing. I like learning more about this conquest, these Napoleonic wars. You know, I am waiting for the video that describes his ultimate defeat and exile to whatever country or island ended up being. I know I knew it at one point, but I'm completely blanking on where he was exiled to, but I'm sure I'll learn relatively shortly. So don't spoil it for me. Leave that one out of the comments, please. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed today's video. And if you haven't, like I said at the beginning, like, share, and subscribe if you want to keep seeing more videos like this, or keep seeing my lovely face reacting to these history videos. So yeah, with that being said, thanks for joining us today, and I'll see y'all next time.